We're living in turbulent times. We continue to see atrocities that smack of the deep state all over them. Where am I coming from? Well, just think about God, school, 9/11, and JFK. The lies that are killing us and the truth that sets us free. Now, that sounds like the title of an excellent book, and we're privileged to have Bruce de Torres, the author of that very book, with us today on The Truth. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you very much, John. It's great to meet you.
Former uh, fellow Atlantean. I guess that's right. I guess we're Atlanteans. I'm not sure. People that used to live in Atlanta. All right, Bruce, so we are in turbulent times. We've got a peace deal that is seemingly hanging by the thread in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians and Hamas. We've got a federal government with I believe, $5 trillion a year budget that is shuttered. They just turned out the lights and closed the doors. And then we saw the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk on September the 10th. And it still shocks me to my core. And I have resisted, consciously, intentionally resisted allowing my mind to consider yet another conspiracy that would lead us back to our own intelligence. Yet, the more I dig, the more I look, the more I probe, the more I am becoming open to the possibility that this was a political assassination organized by people within our government. What do you think?
At this point, I would bet that that is so. That's what I think about that.
And we know I'm going to Dallas in just 3 weeks, Anthony, I think, for the what anniversary is it of JFK's assassination?
62.
62nd anniversary of JFK's assassination. And there are three conferences there memorializing the assassination, and people that are really in the know, like Oliver Stone and Roger Stone, and probably, I think, Mark Lane, people that have made a lifetime of studying the JFK assassination. There is no doubt in my mind any longer that our own government killed the 35th president of the United States. And it is disturbing and it is shocking. How in the hell do these people get away with it? Where is the accountability? And more importantly, how do we stop it?
It'd be great to stop it. My bottom line often is to remember that it has ever been thus. There's something about human nature that lets those who want power over others to either go crazy, or it attracts the insane. It attracts those who at some level are comfortable with the wheeling and dealing of having the levers of control. The way to stop it is to educate ourselves and educate each other and have the courage to have conversations like this, to question authority in a nutshell. And then it's so humbling, John, to try to advise anybody. What do you do when you see that the people who have been pretending to protect us and work for us are hurting us, harming us, restricting us, sickening us, scaring us, exploiting us, and killing us, all with a smile on their face? And I'm at the point, after really a lifetime of reading history, of prioritizing my day to day, literally moment by moment, calm, peace, cheerfulness, and knowing that if I'm scared, I'm useless to myself, I'm useless to anybody else. I can be reactionary and I can make dumb decisions. So once someone looks at the type of events you've described and the kind of reality of what we're up against, then we can, gingerly just maybe the 80-20 rule. 80% of it is just getting convinced, accepting it, telling ourselves we can handle the truth, and then seeking other people like you and I to have conversations with. Because if we don't corroborate our impression of reality with others, we can go insane and succumb to alcoholism and drug addiction, or video games and just cynicism and nihilism, and then we're really on the path to self-destruction. So what's at balance is our own personal, grip and functioning, and then have conversations to come back to where we started with the question: how do we stop them? All of the above, or spreading the word one person at a time? That's real broad strokes. I can get a lot more specific, but that's from the heart.
Well, conservatively, 100 people who had personal knowledge of JFK's assassination died under very mysterious circumstances. There was a epidemic of automobile accidents that caused the death to the driver. Then there was a pedestrian that had firsthand knowledge of the assassination because she knew Jack Ruby, she knew Lee Harvey Oswald, and she had met him at Jack Ruby's club. And she had overheard talk about the assassination. She tried to warn the authorities. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head.
Sheremy Rose, something like that.
I think you're right at it.
Rose Sheremy, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And she ended up being run over basically on a Texas highway in the middle of the night. It was very bizarre. But so these people will kill to maintain their power and to avoid accountability. Clearly. Then, but with JFK's assassination, the more you dig into it, the more I have become convinced, and I think people that have made a lifetime of studying this are convinced that it was basically, there were multiple reasons for it, and a lot of people were mad at him. But I think the principal one is that he said, I'm going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and spread its parts from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And 6 months later, he was dead. I put that at the top of my list of motivations for someone to kill Kennedy. Sorry, the dogs are not happy. Anyway, but you, on some level, you do not accept it under any circumstances, but you understand it. It could be survival if you were in that position, if you worked in the CIA and, they rationalize that they're doing the work on the behest of the American people and to save democracy. I think they're doing their work, and the bad actors are doing their work to aggrandize themselves and their egos, including killing people. But what I cannot contemplate, I cannot find a motivation for taking down Building 7 in September the 11th. What possible motivation could the deep state, the CIA, have had, or what role did they play in it? I don't know. But what we do know about 9/11 is that all of the debris from the buildings were expeditiously loaded onto barges that were shipped to China. Now, why would you do that? At the time, I mean, I was so grief-stricken, I didn't really spend any mental energy thinking about the fact that they were shipping the debris to China. They were also arresting people if they collected any debris from the Twin Towers, and their rationalization was that it was disrespectful to those who died. Now it feels like one big cover-up. And we were told that the foundation of Building 7 was weakened by the falling of the Twin Towers. That's rubbish. Every structural engineer and architect in the country that has looked at it has opined that there was no weakening of the foundation of Building 7. Instead, it was a controlled demolition, just like we've seen occur all across the country when they want to take down some obsolete big tall office building or apartment building, they just load it full of dynamite and they bring it down very intentionally to a little spot on the ground. And that's what Building 7 looks like. And then you look at Charlie Kirk. I'm not saying that the deep state did him in. I am open to suggestion, and there seems to be a lot of smoke around it that would point us in that direction. What possible motivation would they have to take out a 30-year-old genius patriot who was trying to help educate college kids? I mean, how demonic would you have to be willing to do that? But what is the motivation? I don't know.
Wow.
Do you have any insight?
Yes. After, like I said, decades of, a lifetime of history, and then really 21 years now of really looking at these deep events, we'll say. You mentioned JFK, 9/11, Building 7, Charlie Kirk. Let's go in order. Myself and many consider JFK's assassination where the deep state or the players behind the scenes stepped onto the stage. Look what we can get away with. Look what you can figure out. The official story's nonsense, and there's nothing you, the American people, can do about it. And by many, many measures, and a lot of them are in my book that you graciously mentioned at the top of the show, by many measures, that was a fatal blow to America. And I make the case that with more and more of our government and more of our tax dollars and more of our resources in the hands of these nefarious players, doing less and less for us and doing more and more for exploiting and hurting people and nations and resources all over the world, that it was the slide to the end of America, which I claim happened with the USA Patriot Act and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, John. Meaning, since those events after 9/11, we don't have our constitutional rights. Not living under the Constitution, we are literally not America. Politics is, Frank Zappa in the 1980s, the musician, said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're kind of seeing now is the other quote that he said. They'll present the show and the pageantry of democracy for as long as it suits them. But when it's not worth it anymore, they'll take the props and the sets off the stage, they'll pull back the curtains, and we'll see the brick wall of the theater of tyranny for what it is. And by many measures, we're seeing a lot more of that now. I had the privilege of doing marketing for the publisher of my book, Chris Milligan, at trineday.com, TRINEDAY.com, who's been studying these things since the 1970s, when his father, former CIA, told him in 1969, the Vietnam War is all about drugs. There are these secret societies behind it all, and communism's all a sham. They're out to opiate your generation. To them, it's all a big game. So, John, that's the context that I remember, that I know now, and I can't forget that I've seen this in so many books and all the work that I did for Chris, being exposed to all of his other authors, all this history that challenges official history. Unfortunately, with the Kennedy assassination, Chris saw ducks put in a row for that assassination before Kennedy was even elected. Meaning, and let me be a little patient as I spell this out. Anyone who does deep research, you start to see these families in positions of power in the hugest banks and the hugest corporations of America and the hugest law firms on Wall Street swirl around the secret societies, Skull and Bones at Yale being a major example of them. But also the thread, the line, the lineage of the Freemasons. So no one of these groups pulls the trigger alone on anything. But John, you sound very well informed and interested in the JFK's assassination. Maybe you've seen this, maybe this is news to you. Dealey Plaza is an outdoor Masonic temple with the obelisk, like Washington, D.C., with pools of water next to it, like the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. And of all the ways to kill a president, to do it in broad daylight, it really was the deep state, the powers behind the scenes, thumbing their nose at us and saying, look what we can do and you can't stop us. So, why bring down Building 7? Why self attack us in 9/11? Why take out a Charlie Kirk? Before we get to the tangible impacts on society and the culture wars and how it inflames us against each other, there is the simple trauma of it all, which is the society-wide application of what the CIA developed with its MK Ultra mind control experiments beginning in the 1950s. Many podcasters and independent researchers are justified in saying so many of these horrific events, worldwide, domestically, shooters, fires, could easily be, and one would bet, psyops that are meant to have us quivering in fear, because then we do what we're told a lot more easily and we give up. We think you can't fight City Hall. These powers are just enormous. And it would be great to save time at the end, before the show is over, John, to talk about reasons to be cheerful. You said, how do we stop them? Well, look, I really want to explore that before we're done. If possible, happy to, go anywhere the conversation wants to go. But it's like John Lennon said, I'd like to know what the rulers of the world think that they're doing. I think that they're all maniacs and they're doing things for maniacal reasons. And there's a case to be made that power over others really drives people insane, and it feeds their sadistic, malicious, vicious, the worst of human potential, which children demonstrate. If they're a little too unsupervised, children can be really vicious and nasty. So we have to grow up and be adults. And we have to embrace and challenge ourselves to embrace the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Life works pretty well when everyone's got that orientation. But only people who are well nurtured and who can well nurture themselves and care about the happiness of others can walk the path of, I want to be happy and I want to help others be happy, in a nutshell.
Well, those are powerful words, and there's a lot to unpack there. I've made the statement on this show numerous times that if we as a collective world community could just agree, and we don't have to do it in Christian terms, but if we could just agree to adopt the 10 Commandments, the world would be a wonderful place to live. But it seems idealistic on the one hand, and I think it overlooks the fact that there is sheer evil in the world that is not going to be moved by the 10 Commandments or anything else in the Bible, the Quran, or whatever other religious tenet you want to pull out. Yeah. They're just bad people.
The 10 Commandments reflect and augment and amplify one of the immense values and powers of the American founding and its ideals, which is that we have rights, and rights make might. So if we could honor the 10 Commandments, even in a secular way,
that's right,
and honor the idea that you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and so do your children. And that guarantees that I have those rights and my children have those rights. So if we can create public policy and decide how much taxes ought to go to the roads and how much ought to go to maybe helping, poor people, then we're all oriented to the same basic thing, is that no one's got the right to. Might does not make right. Again, it goes back. That's the truth of children. I can take your lunch money just because I'm bigger than you. What kid doesn't do that? Because it's so primitive. It's so animalistic. It's so undeveloped. It's so, ugh, me bigger, me take. Okay, that's where children are until one grows up to be an adult and wants to be an adult.
So where does Donald Trump play into all of this? I've watched with horror in real time as someone tried to take his life in Butler, Pennsylvania, July the 13th, 2024. It ripped the scab off because I had been home from the fourth grade when Kennedy was assassinated. I watched that unfold in real time and with horror as a 10-year-old, and it brought back those vivid memories. And I, I was in a state of shock, disbelief, and horror as I waited for that 1 minute, maybe a minute and a half before President Trump got up, and he was bleeding, but we knew that he was okay. I wonder where he figures into this. I mean, surely he knows that Thomas Matthew Croats did not try to assassinate him. I don't even think Thomas Matthew Croats was on the roof, but let's just say for the moment that it was. It doesn't really matter. There were people behind him that led him or whoever was on that roof to do this. And I think that Croats was just, he was the Oswald of the story. He was a patsy. I think Maxwell Urich was probably the shooter. There's a lot of evidence to support that. I'll spare our listeners from having to hear it again. But it would seem to me that if I were Trump, I'd be mad as hell. And I'd be wanting to bring down the people that did it.
Yeah.
Where is he, though? It seems to me, and this is just, my instincts are pretty good, but I don't have any factual proof of this. I saw Trump on television the other day, and someone asked him about Butler, and he said, well, I asked my people, they said they got the guy, and that was it. Shrugged his shoulders. Next question. And now, I don't know whether he's playing poker. I hope he was. I suspect one part of me says he was playing poker. There's another side of me that says, okay, they've made a peaceful detente. We fired, we missed, you lived. You want to continue to live? Don't look.
Yeah. That's a very plausible scenario. I don't know how young people have. That's too broad of a statement. I was going to say I don't know how they have a chance because I'm old enough to remember when even the mainstream media pounced on anomalies and wouldn't let a president forget and not comment on a bullet he almost took himself. To your point, what kind of poker game is he playing? It might be exactly what you just said, which is frightening because it implies the president of the United States is not the top of the food chain.
Yes.
So he's participating in a game or a show where he's pretending to be the top of the food chain, and we're pretending to go along with him being the top of the food chain. And if he's not, who is calling the shots? What kind of control do they have over him? Donald Trump is a huge question for those who try to be fair-minded and look at what's good, bad, right, wrong, provable speculation about him and what he intends. One of the biggest alarms I have is the accusations of an economist named Catherine Austin Fitts, who has been tracking the missing money from the federal government for 30 years. And she is an eloquent explainer of how Donald Trump has now his current administration. He is surrounded by big tech powers that are making lots of moves, John, to bring in digital currency / digital programmable currency, which Ms. Fitz accuses of being the digital grid, the digital enslavement grid that many markers and indicators say that's where we're headed. You could even accuse the flood of immigrants into Europe 20 years ago, the flood into the United States over the last 10, 15 years with the open borders, as is literally happening right now in Great Britain. Well, because of, the undocumented people, this is why we need to have a digital ID implemented, next year, by the end of this year, next year, 2 years, something like that. And here are the great benefits for it. And freedom watchers for decades, like Alex Jones, has been pulling his hair out. It's all gone now for 30 years, saying the New World Order the prison planet they're trying to erect will spin, focus, stand on that, just the digital currency. John, it it maybe the 80-20 rule has to be 80%, 90% just in prayer and meditation to stay calm and summon what could be, good, even spiritually, and yet be activist in terms of having a show like yours, writing a book like mine, and telling people, boy, I don't want to be a broken record. Question authority and resist as much as you can. And we have to be prepared to say the words President Vance any day, because men Donald Trump's age drop dead. Men his age and his physical shape, who eat what he eats, drop dead in the blink of an eye. And where did JD Vance come from? And that's a whole story of his sponsorship by Peter Thiel, and who Peter Thiel was, the creator first of PayPal and then Palantir, which is the CIA's one of their giant surveillance platforms. So don't we have our work cut out for us?
It certainly sounds like it, and it's kind of depressing, kind of I don't know, demoralizing. But then you come back to what Warren Buffett said: never give up, never bet against America. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I think that in my own belief system, God is in charge, and He will make sure that good triumphs over evil. There may be a lot of speed bumps along the way, but at the end of the day, I am generally optimistic. I just don't really know how we're going to get there. But I'm thinking maybe the American Small Business League might be part of the solution. Tell us about it and the organization that you so well represent.
Thank you very much. We work to expose and stop big businesses from getting federal contracts that are meant for small businesses. This has been going on for decades. And if and when the SBA, which is responsible for making sure that 23% of the federal budget goes to small businesses, if they could actually prove that that happens, they can't, and I'll tell you why in a second. But if and when we can actually make Congress force exposure and compliance of the fraud of that compliance, meaning small businesses really get about 3 or 4% of the federal contracts, John, not the 23% that they're supposed to get, even though every year the SBA says, we met the goal, we exceeded the goal, how about a loan? So at asbl.com, people can learn all about it. We have a project called Don't Cheat Women, and that's our site, don'tcheatwomen.com, to see tangible things to be done, like asking Congress and the president to raise the amount that's supposed to go to women-owned small businesses, which would increase the amount supposed to go to small businesses in general, which would pump $264 billion annually into small businesses who would create 2 or 3 million new jobs every year on top of the 2 million jobs that America typically creates. So it's a very muscular, tangible, foot in the door issue. I'll put a cherry on this cake. The reason to increase the percentage of federal contracts that should go to women-owned small businesses is because they are half the population. They own 40% of all businesses in America. They sell what the government buys. But the law says that they're only supposed to get 5% of federal contracts, and in reality, they only really probably get 1%. When they get a more fair portion, they will be economically more equal to men. Right now, men earn and save more. That's why they hold 75% of most legislative and governors and cabinet positions, and they make most of the laws, because they can't compete to run for office and win office, because that takes money. So to get women economically equal, then they can pursue political equality, and women do have different values and priorities. And assuming we love half the human race, and we love our mothers, wives, sisters, and daughters, and we value their values, and we owe a lot of our happiness to the values of women and mothers and their perspective of peacemaking, etc. They should be in the councils of government.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. There's a problem inherent in what you're saying. Our birth rate is 1.6 per married couple. That's alarming. That is not sustainable. And
Mm,
you need 2.1 babies for every couple in order to outpace the annual death rate that we have in this country. Elon Musk was possibly one of the first people in this country to identify that. And he is certainly trying to lead by example, but with 13 kids. But the reality is that, um, I just wonder how much of the women's movement has created to this diminution of the birth rate. And, if the average age is 75, it's not going to take many years before our civilization is going to be shrinking at an ever increasingly rapid rate.
yeah,
So,
and
how do you balance those two objectives? I'm for shattering the glass ceiling, 100%. Why wouldn't you be? But I'm also in favor of maintaining the family unit. And I mean, my son, he has very liberal uh, paternity uh, leave from his job. I think he gets 6 weeks a year, and they just had their second child, who happens to be a boy. Thank you very much. We need to keep that Gordon name alive and well, but he's playing Mr. Mom a lot of the time. What happens when the paternity time is over, and who's going to raise that child? And is that not
mm,
more suited to the mother than the father? Oh boy, my email is going to light up now. GordonTruth@gmail.com. Have at it.
yeah, there's you back to the theme of how much of things are a psyop. There's a lot laid at the feet of the CIA and others creating the kind of feminism over the last 70 years that distorted that really brainwashed generations of women into thinking I need to compete as a man in the male arenas, and it is to the destruction of the birth rate. And if you really want to look at that, one must look at the devastating harm of the COVID shots and look at the work of Naomi Wolf and her dailyclout.io, because fertility is collapsing in all the countries that took the COVID shot, John, and the human race is under assault. Talk about deep state or conspiracies. There's a great case to be made, and many people persuaded, as I am, that there is a sickening and depopulation agenda. And it's coincident with the rise of all the tech and all the AI and all the robotics and all the gene editing that the psychopaths at the very, very top, the richest of the rich, are envisioning a planet with many fewer human beings. That's why it's so urgent to tell ourselves I'm an adult who can handle the truth, question authority, brace yourself, and then dig deep and find what inside you and other life loving friends is strong enough for this moment, who can know enough history to see civilizations rise and fall and say, it's not personal. This is just what we do as humans. And I'm going to fight the good fight with as much love and happiness as I possibly can.
Good words to end on. Thank you very much, Bruce de Torres, for coming on. He is the author of God's School 9/11 and JFK, The Lies That Are Killing Us. Great conversation. Thank you for coming on. How's the book doing? I'm thinking we can get it on Amazon because I have the order form right here.
You sure can. And folks can read all about it at brucedetorres.com. The homepage is a list of great reviews that I've been privileged to receive.
Well, thank you, Bruce. You're doing good work. Thank you for what you're doing. Please continue to do so and come back anytime.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is The Truth. I'm John Gordon.